Welcome to the Kingsford Flivver Flash. I'm Coach Van Duzen. This is season 23, episode 3. Sit down with Coach Darren Groleau. Well, this is kind of a combination episode between a Flivver flashback and a coach's corner. Coach Groleau has had several successful seasons, not only as a player here at Kingsford, but also as the Flivver wrestling coach. And I hope you enjoy our conversation. All right. Well, thanks for coming on tonight, Darren.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is awesome. So tell us a little bit about growing up here in Kingsford and just kind of your journey becoming a coach.
Grew up in Kingsford, Quinnipiac. Grew up with some pretty good athletes around here. Quinnipiac had quite a few kids around my age, probably about 10 to 12 kids. And we, every day during the summer, we'd play football, soccer, basketball. We'd ride our bikes. I mean, we had some really good athletes and pushed me to become a better athlete and, get involved with sports. I have an older brother, 7-year difference between us, and going through Woodland, and he's in high school. I'm still at Woodland, going to the football games, watching him wear the, maize and blue with pride. It just I couldn't wait for that. When I was growing up, it was so exciting. The kids would come to our school classroom, and I had Mrs. Hofer when Mr. Hofer was coaching. She'd have all the seniors come in and they talk about the football program, and they come out and play football with us on the football field. That meant a lot to us, and got us ready, when we finally hit the age of high school and putting that maize and blue on it was excitement. We were ready to go. We had a good football program, one of the best ones in the UP, and still one of the best oones in the UP. And we were excited. It's been, couldn't wait. Said wearing this, it's been my dream.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And you still see that with, the kids down at Woodland. They still send the kids down for pep rallies and whatnot. And then you see them, in the stands and, playing behind the bleachers. They just can't wait. And it's just a really cool thing that we've got going on here.
Culture. It's the football culture that we have going on.
Without a doubt. What else were you doing in high school other than playing sports?
Working. I wasn't, my dad had a lawn care business and I was helping him out with that. I was helping out, my assistant coach worked at a furniture store. I was helping out, doing that, doing typical kid stuff. If I wasn't, sports, I was driving around or hanging out.
Lapping the gap.
Try not to, get into too much trouble. I was fortunate we didn't do anything too stupid, but typical kids, Halo was big, getting four TVs, getting all the Xbox,
nice.
Playing that, so we did a lot of that. Sports was a lot of my time, being football, wrestling, the soccer, we sports was big for me.
Sure. So how did you end up getting into coaching?
My gym teacher was Mr. Murdoch.
Okay.
My favorite gym teacher. He was my freshman football coach, and he was my first wrestling coach. And just the way that he was with us kids, and the impact that he made on my life, I'll never forget that. And that's what I want to do. Coaching's the next best thing to teaching, and I love it. I love being the positive role model. I love being around the kids and watching them grow as not only athletes, but as individuals. And, Mr. Murdoch helped me grow not only as an athlete, but as an individual. And, I love to give back to my sports that have given me so much.
That's awesome. And I coached 1 year with Kevin Murdoch, and I always say I learned so much in that year because he really mentored me. It was his last year, and he let me call the offense on the JV football team. And I had been coaching football for a while, but always on the defensive side of the ball. And I learned so much. It was like I had never coached football before, just switching to offense. So I know Kevin had a big impact on a lot of Flivver athletes for sure. So other than coaching, what are you up to? Where are you working? What are you doing?
So I work at Billerud now. They've been sold. It was Verso Paper. Been there now since January. Worked at Boss Snowplow for 5.5 years. Systems control for 1.5 years before I got into the paper mill. if I'm not during the off season for wrestling, I got into RC racing. That's a fun little hobby.
Nice.
Dirt biking, mountain biking, traveling. My nephews, I have two nephews that go to Iron Mountain. I know I can't help that, but
Let's go on the other side of Woodward, we say.
yeah, they go to Iron Mountain, but they're I don't have my kids myself, so I do a lot with them watching them play the respective sports. I know my younger nephew plays AAU with like Morgan Slake and that, so they
Okay.
travel all over. So I go to their tournaments when I can during the summer, and um do a lot with those guys with my nephews. They keep me entertained,
That's awesome.
keep me on my feet.
So you are currently the wrestling coach at Kingsford. So let's talk a little bit about that. How long have you been coaching wrestling, and what is that like?
I've been coaching. This is my here. Technically be my 13th year. I've been helping out as assistant coach since I've been out of high school, 2009, with Kingsford. I spent 2 years at Kingsford, 3 years at Kingsford. Then there was an opportunity to actually head the other side of Woodward. Went over to the other side for a couple years. Spent a year at Niagara, Florence before Mr. Murdoch stepped down, and he reached out to me. I already had connections; all the kids knew me and all that, and I always wanted to come back to Kingsford at some point in time. And now I've been head coach now for, I think this is my 7th year as head coach. Might be 8th even. Might be 7th or 8th year as head coach now with our Kingsford program, and we've been plugging away, getting our numbers up there. And honestly, this year we've got some good numbers, and we got some good athletes. It's been fun to watch, and our program's been coming along pretty good lately.
That's awesome. So this is a football oriented podcast. So let's talk a little bit about some of those wrestling skills that transfer over to football. Now, you are an athlete, did both, and you also have a lot of athletes that wrestle but also play football. And before we started recording, we talked about some of those, and they're doing great, not only on the mat, on the field, but also in the community and just in life. So talk to us about some of the things that transfer between wrestling and football.
Big thing is with wrestling, it's all about using your opponent's momentum against them. You got the big linemen. You guys are pushing each other around, and best thing for a lineman can do is get into wrestling, because you got to use lower man wins every time, especially down in the trenches there when you guys are battling, and using your weight against your opponent, just knowing when to move your hips, and tackling. Biggest thing is learn how to proper technique and a tackle. Same thing with the blast double in wrestling. Staying low, driving through your hips and driving through your opponent. You're doing the same thing. But we love linebackers.
Right.
We love linebackers because they know how to stay low. They know how to blast through their the offensive player. Going to shedding blocks or hitting the running back. You look at Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis goes down as probably one of the greatest middle linebackers of all time. He was a Florida State champ, and he owed a lot of his success to wrestling. If you watch how Ray Lewis played linebacker, he was low, he hit hard, and he always was able to throw his opponents around. You watch him play, that's what we like. We love that.
Yeah, I look at from the football side of the house, when wrestlers come to us, they understand body position, they have great body control, and they understand leverage.
Yeah.
Especially like you were mentioning with the linemen, they understand if I can get to this opponent's hip, I can pin him inside and we can run outside him. Thinking more of the offensive and defensive line side of it, but also linebackers. And then I go back to Toby Wilcox, who was on the podcast right after he did his state championship run in wrestling, was also a fantastic running back for us, and just understood that balance, body position, leverage, body control.
Yeah, there's
all of those skills transfer over for sure.
Yeah, wrestlers have a really good balance. You get some of the guys they're flexible. You get some of the guys who are out there doing splits and stuff, and they're
There's
sitting
another
there,
one, right?
but they're really good flexibility, and they're very good with instead of guy puts a shoulder in them, they know what to do. Best example is Eddie Cardew. Eddie Cardew he said best thing he ever did was came up for us and made him a better football player. He was throwing guys around. He became all GNC, I think, for football. He said he owes a lot of that to our program, to our wrestling program. He's like, I just got to know feeling the guys momentum, using how his weight against me and just blowing when to seal him out.
Yeah, and Eddie Cardew was on very early. He was on the 5th episode ever of the Kingsford Flivver Flash way back in, that was 2019. So yeah, Eddie Cardew, and he always had great hair. I don't know if he kept that on the wrestling mat or not, but
yeah, he was you say that. He liked his hair.
Talking a little bit about some of the same players, and I already kind of know the answer, and it does involve a football player, but tell us one of your favorite coaching memories coming out of wrestling.
So I have a few of them. Obviously, it's such a huge accomplishment just for our guys to make it to states. We have a really tough regional, and just make it to states is just a huge accomplishment. And each one of our state qualifiers that we've had since under my tenure have been all football players. Toby Wilcox, Trevor Povolo, Matthew Wilson, Josh Peterson. They're all football players. For those guys to be also on the podium at the end of the year. Matthew Wilson, went on a tremendous run to make it to the podium. But probably my favorite memory, was we discussed before, is not only their athletic success, but how they are as human beings. And Matthew Wilson going out there and putting himself out there and putting another individual first after he wrestled his butt off to make it to the next round of the state tournament. Yeah. Matthew went out there and he wrestled that individual, and that was just such a huge success in that. And
can you kind of go into that story, because I know that story a little bit, but our audience might not, and it's a really cool story that says so much more about what kind of wrestler he is, but more specifically what kind of person he is and what kind of human being he's going to be when he's 25 35 years old.
So Matthew Wilson, he was our heavyweight last year. We weighed in, obviously in the mornings. We get our singlets on. We got to weigh in before the state tournament. And there was a young gentleman with Down syndrome. He had a singlet on. He was walking around with his clipboard. I think he was a manager and all that for Lake City. And he was just walking around. He just wanted to be part of the team and that down there. And we got down to it. We got down to the end of the day, and the top 4 wrestlers make it to regionals, and Matthew Wilson made it to the top 4. He had to wrestle his 3rd, 4th place match, and I saw that young man. His name was I think his name was Jacob Brown. Don't quote me on that. I think his name was Jacob Brown, and he was getting ready he had a singlet on. He was getting warmed up before the heavyweights. And me being, I'm a pretty outgoing person. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody, and I kind of flex him like, hey, you got somebody to wrestle? And he's like, no. I'm like, really? All right, 1 second. I asked his coach, I'm like, hey, do you have anybody to wrestle? He said, no. He looked like he wanted to wrestle. He had everything up. He had his singlet on, his headgear on, all ready to go. So I'm like, give me 1 minute. And I went over to Matthew, who was getting warmed up for his 3rd and 4th place match. I'm like, Matthew, you want one more match with him? And he goes, without hesitation, yeah, let's do it. So we went to the head table, told them what was going on, and they said, all right, after everybody's done, we'll have you 2 wrestle. Perfect. And after, thankfully, Matthew won his 3rd, 4th place match. So he was going out on a 0-2 at the end of the day there, but he ended up taking 3rd in the tournament. After he got done with that, we went out there, and it was a big thing in front of everybody before all the awards and all that was presented. Matthew went out there and wrestled this young man. And he knew Matthew's weakness was a headlock. He got headlocked and he pinned him, and the whole crowd erupted. But it was just Matthew being Matthew. And, I think anybody from our program would do that. But Matthew just took it to another level in that. And it was great to watch. And it, became a pretty good viral, story. But that's just the type of person that Matthew is. We love having kids like that represent our community, our school, and both our football and our wrestling programs, because Matthew is just such a good kid.
He really is. And I had mentioned before, but I saw him today at Super One. He had picked up a shift. He's back from college for the winter. And as this publishes, we're recording this way back in December, but I saw Matthew, and I got to tell a quick little story on Mr. Wilson. And I think he was actually on the podcast as well. I'm trying to look that up. But what made me think of it is you brought up Kevin Murdoch. I think Wilson might have been on it a couple times. Looks like back episode 17. So again, way back in 2019, he was just a young pup back then. But as he's playing JV football, I mean, he's just a mountain of a man. And if you don't know, Wilson is at Albion right now. And he was, as a freshman, he said he was basically third string. He got to play a little bit in the beginning of the year as right tackle, but the senior graduated and there was one of their freshmen. So there's some jockeying to be had. But Coach Murdoch, Matthew is such a nice kid, like to a fault, right? So on the football field, Coach Murdoch had him on the sideline, like out of bounds, and you go, okay, when you're out here, you can be really, really nice. And then he had him step over the line to the other side when he's on the field, and he's like, but when you're on this side, I want you to be mean. Okay, so come over to this side, nice. Come over to this side, mean. And we always used to tease him like, hey Wilson, I hear the other quarterback's got your phone in his shoulder pads.
We learned that don't touch Matthew's phone. We learned that do not touch Mr. Wilson's phone. You get a little salty about that. That's probably the only time you get to see some aggressiveness out of him.
Right. And another one of your wrestlers I had a couple funny moments with was Toby Wilcox. And he played tailback for us that JV year. And we're playing Marquette. It's Coach Murdoch's last game. And if we win, we're the GNC champions. If they win, they're the GNC champions. And it's tied at 20 to 20 in the fourth quarter. And we start about our 30, 35, something like that. And we ran ice with Toby Wilcox about 15 times in a row, all the way down the field. And he still brings that up. But him and Michael Meneguzzo jogged over. We're on like the 12-yard line, like, you got to run toss. Nobody's out there. I was like, okay, run it. And they went out there and Toby scored, but he still talks about how we ran ice 15 times in a row. So yeah, just some great memories with kids, and like the one you shared with Matt Wilson is just fantastic.
Yeah. And Matthew came a long ways, with not only in football, but with wrestling, just trying to get his aggression up. And I think wrestling kind of helped with him get a little bit more aggressive on the football field, because his sophomore, he didn't come on as a sophomore. Apparently, I said this. I don't recall ever saying this, but if you ask Matthew, he had at the state tournament, he had a really rough first tournament. And apparently, told him I would trade him for a toaster. Don't know. I don't think I've ever said that, but if you ask Matthew, I would. It was such a bad match, and you like, Matthew, I'd trade you. If you weren't such a nice kid, I'd trade you for a toaster.
That's awesome.
But I totally take that back. He came out and he had such a great, senior year for us. It was fun to, such a good kid. Again, you ask him, apparently I would have traded him for a toaster, which I don't have no need for a toaster, so I don't know why I would trade him for that. Not a big toaster guy.
That's awesome. But it's things like that. And that's something that you two will joke about, 20 years from now, when he's back with his own family and whatnot. And, I look at the same thing with Wilcox, and we had talked about before we hit record some of the other ones, Povolo and Petey. It's so awesome to see those kids kind of grow up in front of you and then launch off into the world and do great things.
Yeah, 100%. That's what it's worth when you see those kids are, like I said, not only successful on the football field, the basketball court, the wrestling match, but they're successful off the mat, and that's something we've been building not only as a football program, but I just feel as a community is being successful on the mat, on the fields, and out in the community and in the classrooms. I feel like we've been very, very blessed with some very good student athletes over the years.
For
We don't
sure.
we're not I know there's certain other programs that kind of struggle with the kids, just keeping them on the field and getting in trouble, and we don't have that issues. We've been very, very fortunate. We're probably the worst thing I've dealt with in 7 years is you know um Elliot Johnson throwing Augie's shoe in the toilet. you know that's the worst thing I got to deal with in 7 years. It's pretty good. And Elliot will swear to God that he tried aiming for the sink. I'm like, buddy, the sink's 4 feet the other way. There's definitely a reason why you're on the wrestling mat, not the basketball court, because you're aiming for the sink, you hit the toilet, you're sitting in the right sport.
But even there, look at the great things that Elliot is doing now.
100%. Like I said,
Great kids
that's
there.
the worst. That's the worst thing that I got to deal with: the shoe thrown in the toilet. We're doing good things as a program, and not
Right.
only that, like at our school. We've said it 1,000 times. We've been very fortunate not to have some good kids come through our programs.
For sure. And I'm sure you've heard our football players, we live by the win-win-win mantra: win in the classroom, win in the community, win on the field. So our meeting here is going to end in just a few minutes, but before that happens, what advice do you have for those young flivvers coming in? I teach 8th grade, so I talk with those kids all the time, but as they're moving into high school and they're preparing for their high school years, what's some advice you'd have as they move into really being a flivver?
Especially towards the athletes, when you wear the maize and blue, when you see the Kingsford going across your jerseys or your uniforms, remember that you represent our community, our school, yourself, your parents, your family. Just, set yourself to a high standard of being not only a winner on the field, but a winner off the field, making good decisions, making sure you're being successful, in everything you do, and pushing yourself and getting yourself out of your comfort zone. If in order to be better at, whatever you're doing and your homework, your classes, your whatever, if you have your jobs, trying to, ask to do a little bit more, learn every day. That's something that we always talk about, is when you come into that wrestling room, is learn and be better than yourself, be better each and every day you walk through those doors. You better yourself each and every day. That's something that we try to talk about even as a young individual. Always push yourselves, always be better than the person you were yesterday.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, when you mentioned something about representing your community. This is a couple of years back, but I think our volleyball team had gone somewhere. I don't remember exactly how the story went, but somebody had approached the volleyball coach. I think it was Jacqueline Kreider at the time, and said how impressed she was with Kingsford and how they conducted themselves. And it was not only that volleyball team, but I think football, maybe the freshman team had been there, prior, and everybody just conducted themselves polite and yes, no, thank you, no, thank you. Left the locker room clean, all those little tiny things that you don't really think about. When someone's sitting in the stands or watching a wrestling meet, they think, well, the coaches, they do practice and they do this. And there's so much more to that, and trying to get these young men and women to be better people. So, and that's a really great message. So if people wanted to know more about Flivver Wrestling or follow you on social media, how would they do that? What's the best way to link up with Darren?
I'm on Instagram at Groleau304, Twitter Groleau304. I'm on Facebook, Darren Groleau. I try to make, a lot of soccer games, football games, anything. I try to be supportive to our program. Track meets, I'll be able to help. I'm usually there helping out at track meets. Team across Woodward comes over and plays Kingsford. I'll be at that basketball game. Usually always after school. I try to get in there a little bit beforehand and usually hanging out outside the gym, trying to catch some of the kids, talking to them. So
Yeah. What's the
I
best way to follow Flivver Wrestling?
been thinking about getting a Facebook little thing going, just like we have our Flivver football. The best thing to do is follow me. I'm always posting stuff
Okay.
On social media with how our kids are doing. I know Chris Wilcox does a pretty good job of keeping us updated on the kids on their success throughout the season.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you, giving up part of your evening here, and good luck the rest of the season.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, as always, I ask that you go down in the show notes, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can read our blog, and of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, this is Coach Van Dusen. Win in the classroom, win in the community, and win on the field.